Beyond the blue horizon waits a beautiful day.
It's not just what you do, it's where you do it. The United States Virgin Islands.
Beyond the blue horizon lies a rising sun.
Take a break with Bob and Mary, weekdays 4 to 5 on 4.
From the NBC News Election Center in New York, Decision 78, reported by John Chancellor, David Brinkley, Tom Brokaw, and Jessica Savage. Here is John Chancellor.
And Howard Baker in the state of Tennessee, our projected winner to be reelected as that state's Republican senator, is making this statement.
I'm also proud, my friends, to be able to say that the people of Tennessee have restated their confidence that the Republican Party is their statement of the future by the election, by their election of a Republican governor tonight, too. We've come a long way together, Republicans have in this state. A long time we didn't do very much, except here in John's district and in Jimmy Quillen's to the east. But we became a full-fledged statewide party only a few years ago. But now we've recovered the ground that we lost. Now we're in a position, after this race, with my humble gratitude to you for giving me an opportunity to continue of service in the United States Senate, and with the election of a Republican governor, the Republican Party is ready now to become the majority voice in this state.
And that was Senator Howard Baker referring to Lamar Alexander, who is our projected winner, another Republican, to be the next governor of the state of Tennessee. We have some projections in the state of Oklahoma. As far as the Senate race is concerned, in the state of Oklahoma, David Boren is our projected winner. That will still be for a few days, Governor David Boren, who left the governor's office to run for the Senate, and he is our projected winner. And in terms of the governor of Oklahoma, Lieutenant Governor George Nye, another Democrat, is our projected winner for that. So that means that in the state of Oklahoma, Dewey Bartlett's old seat in the Senate, which was a Republican seat, has now gone to David Boren, a Democrat. Let's have a look at the maps and see where we stand now at this hour of this 1978 election. In terms of governors, you see there Jim Thompson in Illinois, Lamar Alexander in Tennessee, two of our projected winners for governor. We also see George Busby in Georgia. We see Harry Hughes in Maryland. We see a number of others. William Milliken, a Republican in Michigan, is our projected winner as far as the governors, which brings us to this numerical summary at this hour of how the governors are standing. We calculate now that seven Democratic governors have been elected and 3 Republican governors have been elected so far. And now, looking at the map, let's see how there you see it on your board. And let's look at the map and see about the Senate. There's the Senate map, and as you can see on the Senate map, we have projected Donald Stewart in Alabama, David Pryor in Arkansas, Sam Nunn in Georgia, Charles Percy, an interesting race in Illinois, Walter Huddleston in Kentucky, Bill Bradley in New Jersey, David Boren in Oklahoma, Strom Thurmond, who may be making an appearance during this hour, stay tuned, in South Carolina, Larry Pressler in South Dakota, and in Tennessee, you just saw him, Howard Baker. And that brings us to the numerical summary that the Democrats have been elected to, or projected winners in 8 Senate seats and taken 1. That's what that +1 means, taken 1 from the Republicans, and the Republicans so far have been elected projected winners by us in 4 contests. David? Oh, sorry, Tom?
In Oklahoma, George Nye, who was the lieutenant governor there for many years, campaigned in a white hat as the good guy, and it apparently paid off for him. He's the projected winner in Oklahoma, the new Democratic governor of that state. In Pennsylvania, a state that has been ridden by scandal for the past 4 years during the Democratic administration of Governor Milton Schaap, Schaap is not running for re-election. The Democratic nominee is Pete Flaherty, the former mayor of Pittsburgh, a former member of Jimmy Carter's Justice Department, running against Richard Thornburg, a U.S. attorney in Pennsylvania who prosecuted a lot of members of the Milton Schaap administration. Just a few votes in at this time, less than 200, well, just over 200, as you can see there, and so we still do not have enough of a vote to give you any kind of a reading in Pennsylvania. It's one of the races that we'll be watching carefully. Another state that was hit hard by scandals during the past 4 years, another state with a Democratic governor incumbent, that's the state of Maryland. It began this term with Marvin Mandel as the governor, and then the lieutenant governor took over when Mandel was found guilty on several counts of a variety of corruption. And so Blair Lee became the governor, and then he was knocked off in the Democratic primary by a man by the name of Harry Hughes, the former Secretary of Transportation in the Mandel cabinet. Harry Hughes resigned as a matter of principle, then came back to run in the primary, and as you can see, we are projecting he is the new governor of Maryland. In Connecticut, we are projecting that Ella Grasso, re-elected governor of Connecticut, a Democrat. 1% of the precincts reporting thus far, based on our samples of key precincts around the state, Ella Grasso will be re-elected governor of Connecticut. No surprise there. She's one of 2 women governors in the country, the first one to be elected on her own just 4 years ago. Ella Grasso in Connecticut had the help from all of the Carters with the exception of Amy, the president, Rosalind, Chip Carter, and even Ms. Lillian, who went to Connecticut and said, "I thought your governor was fat and sweaty," but she's not fat and sweaty at all, and she's still the governor. David?
Tom, here's how it stands at this moment. These are not net losses or gains. It's too early to give those. But the Republicans have lost a Senate seat in New Jersey and have lost one in Oklahoma. The Democrats have lost one in South Dakota. Among governors, the Democrats have lost a seat in South Carolina and lost one in Tennessee. We'll be back in a minute.
Until 1914, this was the way to keep 2 pieces of paper together. Then Tom Briggs developed the Bostitch stapler. It was obviously a good idea, so soon everyone was using it. But Bostitch didn't stop there, because when you find a good way to solve one problem, you can often use it to solve others. In fact, you have to if you want to stay ahead of the competition. You can add power and drive staples and nails into wood and concrete and even steel. So today, the Bostitch division of Textron is using this simple idea for holding papers together to cut costs in everything from building boats to building houses. It's making the job easier for thousands of different people around the world, as many Textron products do. Always looking for new ideas and new ways to use them. That's what private enterprise is all about. And that's what we do at every division of Textron.
When you work or play too hard, pain can grip you as muscle aches. Break the grip of pain with Ben Gay. When minor arthritis pain flares up, even simple tasks can be painful chores. Break the grip of pain with Ben Gay. Ben Gay's fast, temporary relief breaks up nagging pain and its stiffness where it lives deep down in your muscles and joints. That's why Ben Gay is America's #1 selling pain relief rub. So when pain has you in its grip, break the grip of pain with Ben Gay.
We have 2 projections. First in Minnesota, an interesting one and perhaps a big surprise. We project the Republican Durenberger as the winner in the race for the Senate. Durenberger, the Republican, we project as the winner in the Minnesota election of a senator. We project that he has defeated Bob Short, the Democrat. This is the old Hubert Humphrey seat. Now we have a projection in Delaware. We project that Senator Joseph Biden, the Democrat, has been re-elected, and that has been expected all along. Jessica?
Well, the Biden race, as you say, was no surprise, but the fact that there's a Republican in Hubert Humphrey's seat certainly is. I think it probably is reflective of the fact that the Farmer Labor Party just couldn't get organized, despite the fact that Walter Mondale went out there, the vice president went out there, Mrs. Humphrey asked that they please get organized and support Short.
Mr. James Earl Carter of Plains, Georgia,
Went
made
out
2
there.
visits there to the state to work with those people.
Mondale has practically lived there.
The thing is, it was, I believe, that there was a Representative Donald Frazier in the primary lost out. That was the candidate that they wanted to support. Instead, Short funded his own campaign. He ran, didn't get the party backing, and so the seat went to a Republican. That is a surprise, according to our projections. A couple of other races where there maybe were no surprises. In Arkansas, let's take a look at the figures there. Governor David Pryor, the present governor, winning over, we project winning over Tom Kelly. Tom Kelly didn't expect to win that race. As a matter of fact, his campaign slogan was, Kelly, sooner or later you will know he is right. So he wants the voters of Arkansas to know that even though he might not have had a chance in that race, there will be other races and he will be back. In Oklahoma, NBC News has projected that David Bourne will win over, Republican David Bourne over Robert Cam. Democrat, excuse me, I'm sorry, Democrat in that Oklahoma race. In New Jersey, no surprise also, with 8% of the precincts reporting Bradley over Bell, 53% of the vote. Bill Bradley, the Democratic winner in the New Jersey Senate race, was the man who apparently picked the right issue. Our polls show that between an outright tax cut and inflation, that was more of a concern to most people. Bradley's opponent, Jeff Bell, stressed that tax cut issue, and while Bell did well among the tax cut voters, inflation was the larger issue, and that is what Bradley stressed, and apparently that is what helped to send him to the Senate from the state of New Jersey. And one more race, we'll take a look at Illinois, another NBC News projection. We, of course, have projected early in the evening that Republican Charles Percy will return to the Senate, 1% of the precincts reporting in. John?
During this evening, from time to time, we're going to talk to some of the leaders of both of the parties. At the moment, we're going to talk to former President Gerald Ford, who is in a hotel here in New York City, across town from us. And he has, Mr. Ford, have you been keeping a yellow pad and a pencil there, keeping track of all this?
Well, I'm keeping track in my head and trying to see how it goes based on some of the places I was campaigning in the last month or so, and there really haven't been too many surprises so far, as a matter of fact.
Come on, Mr. President. Weren't you a little surprised that Chuck Percy pulled it out?
No, I wasn't. I was in Illinois on Sunday, and Chuck was really geared up after some complacency at the outset, but I thought Chuck would win. The only surprise was that you could project so quickly in the election night tabulations that Chuck was going to be the winner, but I really was very confident after being in Illinois on Sunday that Chuck would win.
What did you think of picking up a seat from the Democrats, the Humphrey seat in Minnesota?
Well, Dave Durnberger is a very attractive young man. He came from behind. Of course, the Democrats had a very divisive primary between Don Frazier and Bob Short, and it sort of tore apart the unity that Hubert Humphrey and the vice president and others had put together over a period of years. But I think the combination of an outstanding young man like Dave Durnberger and the divisiveness or the division in the Democratic Labor Party up there probably resulted in Dave being the probable winner.
We saw Jim Thompson reelected in Illinois as governor, a Republican, and we saw Howard Baker reelected in Tennessee as a Republican, a senator. What effect is that going to have on the Republican Party in 1980, do you think?
Well, both of them obviously are good potential candidates for the Republican nomination. Howard Baker has done a fine job as a Republican leader in the United States Senate, and this victory will obviously enhance his prospects as a presidential nominee. Jim Thompson, after 2 years as governor of Illinois, obviously in this case convinced the voters in Illinois that he had done a good job, and he can't help but have, I think, broader appeal. He's attractive. He's done a good job as an administrative official in Illinois. Illinois is a very important state. So both of them, coming from different parts of the country, will add to the Republican potentials in 1980.
Well, it sounds as if there's going to be a whole bunch of Republicans available next time. Will you be among them?
Well, we've got a little time, and I'm not worried about the lack of candidates up there in New Hampshire in February of 1980. We'll have a lot of good candidates. I think the voters will have a good many choices to make, and I don't think you'll see me in New Hampshire, but we'll be around, and we'll be helping wherever we can in whatever way we can.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. As David pointed out, during this evening, we'll be talking with some of the senior members of the Democratic Party as well, and we'll have more coverage after this.
The new Ford Pinto for $79. A new design for a little American workhorse. New up here, new back here, new in here, and it's loaded. Bucket seats, standard. AM radio and electronic ignition, standard. 2.3-liter engine, standard. Electric rear window defroster, standard. Rack and pinion steering, standard. Front disc brakes, standard. At this low price, the spanking new '79 Pinto at your Ford dealer.
Okay, Garvey, let's move it. But, Tom, I'm hungry, and my Swanson Hungry Man entree tastes so good. It's meat and potatoes and plenty of meat.
How about dessert?
Oh, you want a Hungry Man dinner. Look, dessert, vegetables, and the second helping of meat is already in.
Good eating.
That's Hungry Man dinners and entrees. Hey, play ball!
Swanson Hungry Man dinners and entrees. The second helping of meat is already in.
A chemical called dihydrogen oxide is vital to the life of the forest. Water. It even helps fight the greatest enemy of the forest, fire. To make water a better firefighter, Monsanto has developed a fire retardant chemical made from diammonium phosphate. This chemical coats the forest and slows down the spread of the fire. No chemical is totally safe all the time, everywhere. But if we want to protect our natural resources, we need chemicals like diammonium phosphate.
President Carter is watching all this at the White House, sitting in a room with a telephone at his side so that he can telephone the winners and the losers in that case. His former appointment secretary is a man named Tim Kraft, who is now with the Democratic National Committee in Washington and is the president's man there, among many of the president's men. He's with Doug Kiker now in Washington.
With me here at the Democratic National Committee is Tim Kraft, who is a special assistant to President Carter. Mr. Kraft, what is the president's mood on this election day?
Well, I think it's one of confidence. We've had quite an active role in the campaign. He's made at least 21 trips on behalf of over 30 or 40 candidates, and we feel like there's been a good record in the last couple of years, a partnership between the administration and the Congress, and we think we'll have a good showing for the Democratic Party across the country.
We have a new poll tonight which shows that only 39% of the American people want Mr. Carter to run for re-election again. Do such polls bother him?
No, I don't think they do. We've had, you know, some discouraging polls probably about midsummer, but the president's inclined just to try to do what's right for the country and let the politics take care of itself.
So such things don't bother him at all?
Well, I don't think they bother him in the course of his duty or what he tries to do as president.
Does he believe he genuinely helped Democratic candidates with all this campaigning?
I think that the administration's record in partnership with the Congress has created a favorable environment for Democratic candidates, and I think that will be reflected in the election returns.
Tell us, give us a little personal insight. Where is the president now? Is he watching the election returns? What's he doing tonight?
Yes, he came back from Camp David, I believe, about 7:30, and he had planned to watch the returns from the residents to place some phone calls around the country.
Thank you very much. That's Tim Kraft, who is Special Assistant to President Carter, and I'm Douglas Kiker at the Democratic National Committee.
John and David, there are several important governor's races that the White House is watching. I know Doug has just been talking with Tim Kraft. But there are 4 states that are very important to the Democrats. Ohio, we don't have any results in from there yet. New York, we understand that Governor Kerry, who the president campaigned for, is doing quite well. Michigan, we don't have, yes we do. We do have final results in Michigan, final projection in Michigan. President Carter campaigned for the Democratic candidate, Fitzgerald, and of course we've projected the Republican. That is not good news for the White House. The other gubernatorial race that is not good news here could be the Pennsylvania, where we understand that the Republican candidate Thornburgh is doing much better than his Democratic opponent. So at this point in the evening, there are mixed results as far as the White House is concerned. Back to you.
Thank you. We have a projection, an interesting one and perhaps to some extent a surprise, in the state of Kansas. Our projected winner in the election of a senator in the state of Kansas, Nancy Kassebaum, the Republican. She is the daughter of Alf Landon, who ran for president in 1936 and did rather poorly against Roosevelt, still a revered figure in Kansas. His daughter, Nancy Kassebaum, our projected winner for the U.S. Senate in Kansas. We have been hearing from Washington about President Carter and what he is doing tonight, and now we're going to tell you what we have found out today about how well the voters think Mr. Carter is doing as president. We know how 28,000 voters feel about him because we have asked them today. 42% said the president was doing a good job. 37% said fair, and 18% said poor. So there's a plurality there of 55% saying fair to poor. As we might have expected, as everyone might have expected, Democrats and liberals rated the president much higher than the Republicans and the conservatives did. Tom?
David, we're beginning to get some returns on some big states that are having contests for governor. Let's take a look at the situation in Massachusetts, one of the most divided states in the country this year in the Democratic Party. The incumbent governor is Michael Dukakis, but he was knocked off in his own party's primary by a man by the name of Edward King, a former professional football-playing lineman. A lot of regular Democrats in Massachusetts were so stunned by that they jumped over to the side to the campaign of the Republican nominee, Francis Hatch. The Republicans are in a distinct minority in terms of registration in Massachusetts. Just a few precincts reporting thus far, and as you can see, we can't give you much of a vote tally there yet. In New Hampshire, also in the northeastern part of the United States, one of the best known and most conservative men in the country, Meldrum Thompson, is the Republican incumbent. He has about 57% of the vote counted thus far. The 66-year-old conservative seeking his fourth two-year term. In Ohio, James Rhodes, 69 years old. Rhodes has been in office off and on in Ohio for the past 16 years, and he's running for re-election tonight against Richard Celeste out of Cleveland, a 41-year-old lieutenant governor, former Rhodes Scholar, and a former Yale graduate. So those are some of the races and how they're stacking up for governor. And we'll be back after this. I am Tom.
Thanks.
Who's going to throw it to him?
Let's look at some...
Decision 78 continues with the Tri-State Report. Brought to you by American Airlines. Now here are Chuck Scarborough and Jack Cafferty.
Good evening to you once again. The polls have been closed now for about 22 minutes in New York, and the vote is very slow coming in. We have a number of very interesting races ahead of us this evening in New York State. One of the most interesting, of course, is the race for the governorship. The incumbent Hugh Carey, 59 years old, who has, in the polls at least, if not in tonight's vote, has come from far behind. He has managed to combine underdog status with incumbency, an unusual combination. But he's come from far behind in the polls against a challenger, Perry B. Duryea, who at one point was 20% ahead in the early polls a few months back when Governor Carey was in deep trouble. And Carey, in the latest polls before tonight's election, had surged ahead to perhaps 10%. We're going to be looking very carefully at that race as the night wears on. And we have right now at Hugh Carey's headquarters, Melba Tolliver. We're going to switch and see what the mood is right now as the very earliest returns are coming in. Melba?
Chuck, the mood here is just a little bit subdued, but it seemed to me that the party was just beginning to get underway when somebody behind me said, "That's it, the party's over." That remark was in response to a projection that Hugh Carey had indeed been the winner over his opponent, Perry Duryea. Just a couple of minutes, I talked to Mr. Carey's campaign manager, who predicts that Carey will beat Duryea by at least 9% of the vote. Now to Pia Lindstrom at Duryea headquarters.
Okay.
Thank you, Melba. Well, the mood here in the Grand Ballroom of the Hilton Hotel is very quiet at Perry Duria's headquarters. The candidate is apparently somewhere in the hotel in a room with his aides, probably watching television. And needless to say, the mood is not jubilant. There seem to be more press people here than campaign workers, and it is a rather quiet scene. Back to you, Jack.
All right, thank you, Pia. We'll be checking the 3rd, 4th, and 5th congressional districts in Connecticut. There are a couple of horse races going on up there right after these messages.
When you fly on business, you pay full fare. And on American Airlines, you get what you pay for. Introducing a special coach section for full fare passengers only, so your seatmate will be a full fare passenger. And when we have empty seats, most of them will be in this section. At last, you'll get the full fare treatment you deserve. On American, you get what you pay for.
We're American Airlines, doing what we do best.
You're just in time for Altman's pre-holiday home sales. Save $55 on this party punch set. Save 30% on hand embroidery from China, 66 by 86 inches. Save 40% on stoneware from England. Save on shining silver plate, only $10 at Altman's. Save 28% on crystal stemware. A toast to your holidays from Altman's, a most surprising store. Branches, too.
All right, as we mentioned just before the commercial, we have 3 congressional races in Connecticut we're going to be looking at throughout the evening, the 3rd, 4th, and 5th. And a couple of those are going to be very, very interesting. Looking at the boards in the 3rd Connecticut Congressional District, we have the incumbent, 59-year-old Democrat Robert Jaimo running against Republican John Pucciano. Jaimo has been in the House of Representatives for 20 years, and with 28% of the precincts reporting, he is leading his challenger, Mr. Pucciano, by 20 percentage points. We have not yet called that race, but he has a substantial lead with almost a third of the precincts reporting. Now, in the 4th Congressional District in Connecticut, you have the Republican who is running for his life, for Republican Stuart McKinney against Democrat Michael Morgan. This is the congressional district that Republican Senator Lowell Weicker represented up until 1970, and with 17% of the precincts reporting, it is a dead heat. And in the 5th, we also have a dead heat, and this is the seat that was left open when Ronald Saracen decided to challenge Ella Grasso for the governorship in Connecticut. And you have 2 non-incumbents, Democrat William Ratchford and Republican George Guadera, again with 31% of the precincts reporting. Look at the totals there, less than or just a little over 400 votes separating those 2 candidates. So 2 out of the 3 are very, very close in Connecticut, and we'll continue to look at those as the evening goes along. Chuck?
All right, Jack, as you know, in New Jersey, we have projected here that Bill Bradley will win the U.S. Senate race there. Jeff Bell, his opponent, was a one-issue candidate. That issue was taxes, a massive tax cut. He identified himself very closely with California's Proposition 13, and he lost. Carl Stokes is with us now, and Carl, I'm really wondering if this means that tax fever isn't really acute in New Jersey since Jeff Bell is going to lose.
It does not mean that, because Bill Bradley also campaigned on a tax cut, but a lesser one than Bell, and he had a broader base. The other thing is that the Proposition 13 appeal doesn't catch on well with New Jersey voters, because 2 years ago they got an income tax which settled their school problems, helped them to reduce property taxes, and the following year put a 5% cap on spending. So you don't have the same fever in New Jersey, which would permit a candidate to take that single issue and win a major race like the United States Senate.
But it's fair to say the tax cut fever is in no way diminished nationwide, and it's still the major issue in this campaign.
Tax cuts and inflations, and inflation are the 2 most important single issues to all voters throughout the country. The extent to which it has a political impact depends upon what the situation is.
Well, the other thing, too, Carl, Jeff Bell, in attempting to seize on that tax cut issue, was doing what the Republicans, the minute Proposition 13 passed in California, all over the country wanted to do. And the Democrats have successfully diffused that issue. They have, in fact, blanketed that tax cut thing themselves, have they not? And,
That's right. You know what the professionals are saying? They said every day Democrats are sounding more like Republicans, but Republicans are not sounding more like Democrats. No. But here in New York, as you know, Governor Kerry took the tax cut issue right away from Perry Duryea early in the campaign.
No doubt about it.
All right.
Thank you very much, Carl.
We're going to go back now to Decision 78, Network News, John Chancellor, David Brinkley, Tom Brokaw, Jessica Savage and company, and we'll see you in about 20 minutes.
Okay, see you then.
This wine always takes me back. It was the end of that summer up at the lake, and that last day when Nancy tried to say goodbye. We came back to a very special wine, a light, fruity, honest wine. Remember that time when we were
at the lake? Lake Country Wine from Taylor. Wine that tastes as fresh as its name.
This is a good place for a stick-up.
Stick-ups, the invisible air deodorizers from Airwick.
Investigate human potential movement with Donahue tomorrow morning at 9.
NBC News continues its election night report, Decision 78. Here is David Brinkley.
We have a small handful of projections, beginning in Nebraska, where our projected winner in the race for the Senate is J.J. Exon, the governor, the Democrat. We project him to have won a seat formerly held by Republican Senator Curtis, who retired. So in Nebraska, the Republicans, by our projection, have lost a seat to the Democrats. J.J. Exon, the governor, Nebraska, elected to the Senate. We have two projections in Rhode Island, neither of them terribly surprising, probably. First, we project the senator, incumbent senator, Claiborne Pell, in Rhode Island, has been re-elected. That's a Democratic seat. They have held on to it. He is re-elected. In the governorship of Rhode Island, J.J. Garrigy, Joseph Garrigy, the present incumbent, re-elected by our projection. Now we're going to take a look at the map and see how things have been going up to this point, beginning with the Senate. On our map, as you have seen, those states for senators, those states where we have projected Democratic winners are colored red, Republican winners colored blue. And the figures at this point stand this way. The Democrats have elected 6 senators, 11 senators, the Republicans 6. The change at this point, it's too early to be final about it, the change at this point is a gain of 1 for the Democrats. But we can't say what the net change is until we have all the results. Now we'll look at the map showing governors who have been elected tonight. Again, the blue for Republicans, red for Democrats. Most of the states remain white because we don't have the figures for them as yet. And the numerical totals at this hour show the Democrats have elected 8 governors, the Republicans 3. John?
We have what really amounts to a little confession. The returns that we get, the raw vote returns that we get, and they get at CBS and CBS and ABC and the Associated Press and the United Press and all the others, come out of an organization called the News Election Service, which has people all over the country scooping up the votes and putting them into a computer. The computer got a little tired tonight, a little bit slow, and some of you, I'm sure, have noticed that 9:30 Eastern Time, the returns are numerically low. Well, they've solved that problem, and they're now coming in much greater numbers, and we expect to have caught up very soon. But that's the reason, if you were wondering. It happened to everybody all over the country, all the people who use the News Election Service. Jessica?
We don't have that.
While the News Election Service is catching up here at the Senate so fast, we're having trouble keeping them in order, but let's take a look at some of the races that we do have and some of the brand new figures that are in. We'd like to share them with you. In Tennessee, checking the race in Tennessee, where Howard Baker has easily won over his opponent, Jane Eskin, newcomer to politics. 4% of the precincts reporting Howard Baker has 61% of the vote. He said he wanted to be president, but the odds are that he'll run if he gets reelected here, but he quickly added, if I get reelected. That was the first obstacle he had to cross. There you see it right there in the state. We project by the end of the evening, by the way, NBC News projects that by the end of the evening, Howard Baker, when the votes are all totaled, will have 58% of the vote over his opponent, Jane Eskin. In New Jersey, with 8% of the precincts reporting, Bill Bradley, 53% of the vote over his opponent, Jeffrey Bell. And by the end of the evening, we've project in that race that Bill Bradley will win this election by 55% of the votes. In Minnesota, an upset there. Not an upset exactly, because it was kind of a toss-up as to which candidate was going to win, but it was hoped by the Democratic Farmer Labor Party out there that Hubert Humphrey's seat, the one that was filled by his wife, Muriel, would be kept in the Democratic Party. Our projections show that it will not be kept in the Democratic Party, that Republican David Durenberg, 44, an attorney and moderate, a civic leader out there, will take that Senate seat. Durenberger was strong among the liberals and the conservatives, and he was very strong in the religious groups, the Catholics, the Protestant, the Jewish voters out there. There was strength in all age groups, both sexes, in all income categories, and it looks as though the Democratic Farmer Labor Party, by having that internal split and not endorsing their candidate, not supporting him strongly enough, had that seat go to a Republican candidate. In Kansas, in that race there in Kansas, Representative Bill Roy lost, or we're projecting he is losing, to Nancy Landon Kassebaum, Alf Landon's daughter. She will be the first woman in the Senate who didn't go to Congress after first filling out her husband's seat. This is a little bit confusing, but she will be the first woman popularly elected. Margaret Chase Smith filled out her husband's seat in the House first and then was elected to the Senate. Nancy Landon Kassebaum, we project, will be the winner in Kansas. And as far as the race in Nebraska goes, with our projection of Exon winning the race, that is the first time in the history of Nebraska that there will be 2 Democratic senators from that state. And so that's a look at some of the Senate races that we have at this hour. John?
We have a projection in Florida. NBC News projects as the winner of the contest in Florida for governor that State Senator Robert Graham is the projected winner. Graham, in a tough contest with a man named Jack Eckert, former head of the GSA, 19% of the precincts in, and you can see that Graham is well ahead now. These votes are beginning to flow into us. Tom, that's an interesting race.
Robert Graham, I think we'll be hearing a good deal more from. He's a man who ran a very active campaign. He was a member of the state legislature down there, and he was a liberal progressive. He was a member of something called the Doghouse Democrats when he was in the state Senate, and yet he ran a very conservative race as the Democratic candidate for governor. Worked at a lot of different jobs around the state. Took off his pinstripe suit and went to work at a pulp mill, building boats. Showed up with calluses on his hands. Said he worked at 100 different jobs altogether, which is the technique that this year was much more in favor than walking, although walking paid off for a couple of candidates, too.
You know, Tom, I'm so old that I can remember when they went to college and got educations and really tried to prepare themselves for public office. I have nothing against Mr. Graham, who is an estimable man. But the fact is that this year we've seen, not only in his race, but all these other races, a great attention towards self. Toward people doing things that improve their image. And the other theme in that, and I know you would agree with this, is the conservatism of some of the Democrats.
Yes, he is a man who was strongly identified with the liberal wing of the Democratic Party and came out this time labeled a Democrat, but walked and talked very much like a Republican, or at least a northern Florida conservative Democrat. He moved his headquarters to the northern part of the state. He picked up a lieutenant governor from that part of the state and so on.
He did 100 different jobs.
100 different jobs.
One of them, somehow we have failed to mention it. One of these 100 jobs was in a college dramatic production, playing the part of a corpse, which is not a terribly demanding role.
You get calluses in a different place doing that.
We'll be back in a minute.
The Subaru Brat Sweepstakes. Subaru is now giving away 4-wheel drive Brats and mini Brat go-karts. You don't even have to make a purchase. Details, yes you can. Details are at participating dealers. Any licensed driver can win.
Licensed driver!
Wait, that's for the Brats. Kids enter to win the gas-powered mini Brats.
Are you a denture wearer?
Yes, I am.
Do you use extra strength Efferdent?
No, I don't.
Would you try Efferdent on this denture material badly stained with blueberry?
Yes. The blueberry stains are awful, and particularly in between. It's really bad.
Watch Efferdent with 5 cleaning ingredients attack stubborn blueberry stains. In minutes, the stains are gone.
That's very, very good. The stains in between are usually the worst, and they're all gone. I'm going to buy it, and I'm going to use it.
Extra strength Efferdent removes even stubborn stains between teeth in minutes.
Alka-Seltzer salutes the women of America.
Plop, plop. Fizz, fizz. Oh, what a relief it is. Plop, plop. Fizz, fizz. Oh, what a relief
it's no longer a man's world, no wonder you get the same headaches with upset stomachs.
Oh, what a relief it is. Alka-Seltzer, one small step for womankind. Oh, what a relief
During the debate about the Panama Canal and the Panama Canal treaties in the Senate earlier this year, one of the elements taken very seriously in the Senate would be its results at the polls today. Very few people probably will forget the debate, the furor, and the narrow margin of victory, and how many politicians voted for the treaties even though they thought they would be damaged at home. Senator Howard Baker, for example, the Republican minority leader, voted for the treaties, and we have projected him a winner. So we've had our NBC News AP poll takers ask 28,000 people how they feel today about the Panama Canal treaties. The answers, a minority of those questioned, 37%, still approve of the treaties. Half still think they're a bad idea. And that leaves about 13% still not sure how they feel. Tom?
David, we've been watching a number of governors' races tonight with an eye just not who won and who lost, but who may do well in future races, especially for President of the United States. One of our projected winners tonight is Jim Thompson in Illinois, a man who has made no secret of the fact that he would like to be president someday. We projected early on that Jim Thompson, Republican in Illinois, elected governor, and here he is at his campaign headquarters.
You were a big winner tonight, as many expected. Does this mean we're going to be seeing you in the 1980 presidential primaries?
I have no idea what 1980 holds for me and the rest of the country. I know it holds a lot of work for me in Illinois. I told the people of Illinois that I wasn't putting any cap on my career, but on the other hand, I was going to stay here as long as the people wanted me to be governor and as long as there was challenge in the job. And believe me, as of tonight, there's plenty of challenge in the job. We've got a lot of things to attend to. I only had a 2-year term. I'm very grateful for this vote of confidence of the people. It looks like it's going to be a record for re-election in Illinois, and I'm happy for that. But my wife and I worked hard for this victory, and we're just going to take things one step at a time. There are enough presidential candidates around. Let them run for a while.
You're one of the few men I've run across who says he doesn't think much of Proposition 13.
Well, I don't, because they just cut across the board. But on the other hand, I don't blame the people of California for doing it. They were overtaxed with a progressive income tax that ran way up and a property tax that was above the national average. We don't have those kind of taxes in Illinois. They're high, so we're going to go for tax reform in this state, but we're going to do it slowly, carefully, deliberately, and one step at a time. And my first answer is, you cut spending, and that's what I did. I kept spending below the rate of inflation, so we didn't contribute to the dollar's decline, and you balance the budget, and I've done that for 2 years.
Does that have a national appeal, do you think?
Well, it ought to. With a $60 billion deficit at the federal level and with inflation eating away at our dollar, I would think that would have a national appeal.
Let me ask you just one more thing. Your high school yearbook, you wrote Jim Thompson, President of the United States.
Well, you know, 17-year-old kids are likely to write anything in a high school yearbook. You don't want to take that all too seriously, you know.
Does that mean much?
Well, sometimes they're right, sometimes they're not. Let's wait till 1984 and see.
Thank you very much, Governor James Thompson of Illinois. This is Brian Ross, NBC News in Chicago.
Well, it's not the only time that he mentioned it in his high school yearbook. He's talked about it several times since he's been a grown-up candidate for public office as well. Jim Thompson, Republican in Illinois, re-elected tonight. In Tennessee, another new face for the Republican Party. They've taken a seat away from the Democrats in the governor's column. In Tennessee, 7% of the precincts reporting in thus far, but we are projecting 38-year-old Lamar Alexander, a lawyer, a member of the Nixon White House staff, a man who walked more than 1,000 miles across Tennessee, a Tennessee walker, if you will. He has a commanding lead tonight, and we are projecting that he will win election with 55% of the vote. In Alabama, still another new name in the South, in the State House there, Forrest Fobb James, a former Auburn University football star. 16% of the precincts reporting in thus far. He has an overwhelming lead. George Wallace or his wife have been in office in Alabama for the past 16 years, with a small exception of Governor Albert Brewer. But now a new governor in Alabama, Fobb James. We are projecting that he will be elected with 73% of the vote. For those candidates out there left tonight who are still sweating it out, they're probably wishing that they were running on the Democratic ticket in Alabama. There will be a lot of speculation about these new governors across the country tonight and what their future presidential prospects may be. Here is something worth keeping in mind. They're all coming into office just at a time when the taxpayers across the country are not only angry, they're outraged. And the governors are those people who are easiest within reach. So a lot of these governors may get beaten up in the next 2 to 4 years, politically speaking, of course, on their way to the White House, if that's what they have in mind. John?
Some House races that we can report on. In Maryland, Beverly Byron is well ahead in the race for her late husband's House seat. She's getting 92% of the vote in these early returns. In the Indiana, the 3rd district of Indiana, the House Majority Whip, John Bradamus, is the winner there. With 93% of the precincts in, Bradamus leads Professor Thomas Thorson by a sizable margin there. So John Bradamus back to the U.S. Congress. He's getting about 58% of the vote, a little better than he did 2 years ago. And then we have the Indiana, the 6th district, which is an interesting race. That's David Evans, you see on the top there, a 2-term Democrat who is getting 55% of the vote. And the man he's beating is a psychiatrist named David Crane, his Republican challenger. Now, let me tell you about the Crane boys. Phil Crane is a congressman in Illinois, a widely known congressman. Daniel Crane, his brother, is running tonight. We'll report on that race when we get some details on it in Illinois. And you just saw the fact that it looks as though David Crane is not going to win that seat in Indiana that he wants. People were saying that if the Crane brothers, all 3 of them, got to the House of Representatives at the same time, it'd be the first time in history. Not so. A historian in Maine has dredged up 3 marvelous characters who served in the Congress, all brothers from 1854 to 1859. Cadwallader Washburn, Elihu Washburn, and Israel Washburn, Jr. And good for them, they made it, and we'll be back with more after this.
Julie Gillespie goes to a school that's on a tight budget. They wanted to serve hot lunches, but how? Morton's, the frozen food people of ITT, developed a school lunch program with mini kitchens for easy serving. Different lunches for every day. And ITT Morton school lunches cost so little. All of which leaves Julie and her school with a nice, warm feeling inside.
Introducing the fabulous Chrysler New Yorker, a remarkable design achievement. A luxury car that still looks like a luxury car, yet with impressive new fuel efficiency. A contemporary New Yorker with elegant new style, superb detail.
It's so fabulous.
Chrysler New Yorker for $1979.
It's a fabulous New Yorker, New Yorker.
Gas energy, clean, incredibly efficient. America depends on it. Gas energy, twice as much as we've used so far is still underground. More gas can come from America's vast coal resources. Even more from new technologies that could extend supplies indefinitely. Also, your wise use of gas today will mean that much more for tomorrow. Gas energy. America needs it. You can count on it. The future belongs to the efficient.
We're back and we have a projection in Colorado. We project that the Republican, William Armstrong, is winning, has won the Senate seat from Colorado. Floyd Haskell, the Democrat, one of the more liberal members of the Senate, defeated by Republican William Armstrong in Colorado. Let's see, Jessica?
All right.
Glad you got that straight, David.
I was waiting. That was no surprise. Haskell was in trouble when he went home to campaign, and Armstrong kind of took Haskell on. If he was such a good Democrat, why couldn't he get President Carter to change his mind on some of those water projects out there in Colorado? So he was in trouble when he went home to campaign, and Armstrong was expected to do well, and apparently he did.
Excuse me, but wasn't Floyd Haskell the one the president described as a national treasure?
He was, and everybody said if the president described him as a national treasure, then why did the president still insist upon cutting these water projects in Colorado when that was the campaign issue out there? That and the Panama Canal. A couple of other races where a lot of interest. Massachusetts. In Massachusetts, Edward Brooke, the only black in the Senate, trying to hang on to his Senate seat with 1% of the precincts reporting in so far. Representative Paul Tsongas leading Senator Brooke, 53% of the vote. In New Hampshire, Thomas McIntyre Democrat there, trying to hang on to his Senate seat. Gordon Humphrey, an airline pilot for Allegheny Airlines, a conservative caucus leader, first race for political office, 11% of the precincts reporting in so far, and Humphrey's doing very well, as you can see there. In Rhode Island, a race that we have projected, NBC News projects that Claiborne Pell, first elected in 1960, seeking his 4th term as a senator, got it. He got his 4th term as a senator there. He defeated James Reynolds, 35, a bakery executive. And in Delaware, we also projected that Joseph Biden, Senator Joseph Biden, would hang on to his seat. He was challenged by James Baxter. Biden is a Democrat. He was very popular. He was expected to do well. He did do well. Baxter was not well known in the state, despite the fact that he had all kinds of political commercials on the air. Biden, again, takes his Senate seat, 2nd term in the state of Delaware. John?
Looks like it could be a long night in Massachusetts with Ed Brooke and Paul Tsongas that close together. Remember that when Ed Brooke ran in 1972 when he was re-elected, he got 63% of the vote, which is landslide proportions. And now, tonight, it looks very, very close.
With all the problems that he had, of course, with the disclosure, the income disclosure, the divorce proceedings, and the ethics hearings, and all of that going back and forth, he expected to be in trouble, and it was expected to be a very close race. Apparently, it's turning out that way.
I'm also wondering if it's going to be a long night in the Golden Dawn Bar in Youngstown, Ohio, where Tom Pettit is. Tom?
John, at this rate, it is going to be a long night. These are politically oriented people in this bar, and one of the regulars here is Bill Eichenberger, an associate professor of political science at Youngstown State University. Bill, we've been trying to assess how the economic issues have been cutting in this fall campaign. In a city built around the working class primarily, doesn't inflation hurt working people more than others?
Oh, by all means. They're locked into a certain wage scale, and they can't raise prices. They can't adjust their salaries. They have to stick with the wage scale that they have. They're locked in.
They seem to be able to come here to the Golden Dawn, though, and buy a beer or two, don't
they? That's because the Golden Dawn is very economical.
But Youngstown has an unemployment rate over 8%, which is a couple of points above the national average. Does that make it a depressed city? And does that make it a Democratic stronghold hoping for a cure to inflation?
Oh, I wouldn't think it's a depressed city. I think that there's a great deal of hope and there's a great deal of activity going on in Youngstown. But I think it is a Democratic stronghold. I think historically that's the case.
All right, Bill. Thanks very much. We'll be back. Tom Pettit, NBC News, at the Golden Dawn Restaurant and Bar in Youngstown, Ohio.
Well, it looks as if they're having a marvelous time there, doesn't it? Certainly making a lot of noise anyway.
Hey, I have a little piece of news.
Well, you'll have to do it in about 20 seconds.
I think. The early returns in Philadelphia, where Mayor Frank Rizzo is trying to change the Constitution or charter so he can run again, early returns look as though their voters may be turning Frank Rizzo down in Philadelphia.
You mean Rizzo is losing?
That would be a surprise.
Now, I find that fascinating. We'll know more later, and we'll have that story and a lot of other stories after this.
These are some of our winners so far this evening.
Decision 78 continues with the Tri-State Report, brought to you by Amoco and by Citibank. Now here are Chuck Scarborough and Jack Cafferty.
And good evening to you once again, and welcome once again to our coverage of the vote returns in New Jersey, New York, and Connecticut. Returns slightly hampered this evening. We have a problem. I'm going to take a moment to explain it to you. All three television networks have pooled their resources to create something called the National Election Service. And the NES system failed at 7:21 this evening. This is the system that tells us how all the votes are going nationwide. It failed. We have scattered or no returns in many areas, so we're sort of hamstrung by that this evening. Since this is coverage of election returns, we're doing the best we can. Now, you may be asking yourself right now, with the failure of the system to tally the votes, how we've been able to make
projections. We do have some projected winners. And Jack, perhaps you'd like to explain that.
Yeah, Chuck, actually, the way we make the projections, it's independent of the NES system and the raw vote totals. We have people who are stationed at scientifically selected key precincts in various races. We have called El Grasso in Connecticut, we called Bill Bradley. And what happens is when those precincts close and the voting machines are open, our people are there as the totals are read off the back of the machines. They call them into NBC News Election Central here in the building. Our experts interpret those results. And so even though we don't have a lot of big numbers, we are able then, based on those key precincts, to sometimes predict the outcome of the race. We haven't predicted them all yet.
No, we haven't. One of the races we have not yet projected is the race for governor in New York State. We do have some very early returns statewide in that race. We'll take a look at the board and see what they look like right now in the race between Governor Hugh Carey, the incumbent, and Perry B. Duryea, the Assembly Minority Leader, who also happens to be in the seafood business. And you can see right now, this is nothing that we can base anything on, but with 2% of the precincts reporting, Governor Carey has 64% of the vote, and Perry Duryea has 36% of the vote. It seems like a wide gap, but we're certainly going to have to watch this because that's far wider than any poll predicted. We'll be right back after these messages.
You expect more from a leader.
You expect innovative ideas from Amoco. We were a leader in developing lead-free gasoline, the first major brand with 2 grades of lead-free, the first with premium lead-free. Amoco Premium Lead-Free, proven by experience to help stop engine run-on, to burn smoother and help stop knock, and even improve mileage because you don't have to change the timing to prevent knock. Amoco Premium Lead-Free.
Don't you deserve interest on your checking account? Aren't you fed up with banks using your money and giving you nothing in return? Well, those days are over. Now Citibank can give interest on checking. It's 5% checking. 24-hour banking gets better. So get out, go to the window and shout, I'm going to Citibank to get what I deserve. Interest on checking. I'm going to Citibank to get what I deserve.
Interest on checking! Interest on checking!
Interest on checking!
I'm going to Citibank to get what I deserve! Interest on checking!
All right, shortly after the polls closed in Connecticut, they closed up there at 8 o'clock, NBC News was able to project that El Grasso would win re-election to her second term as governor. We'll take a look at the board now and see what kind of update we have on the figures. 34% of the precincts reporting the incumbent Democrat El Grasso, 57% of the votes to Ronald Saracen's 43%. And just a few moments ago, based on those totals and the projections, Republican Ronald Saracen offered this statement at his headquarters in Hartford.
I just was able to get a call into Mrs. Grasso. Her phones were rather busy, and it took us a few more minutes than I expected to, and so I apologize for the delay in coming down here. I did call, obviously, to concede, to wish her well, as she goes on to lead the state for another 4 years, and I truly do wish her well.
And Chuck, she was formidable, I think would be the word going into this election. When she first took office 4 years ago, the economy was in trouble up there. They had a budget deficit. Unemployment was running at around 8%. Those things have changed, and she has taken the credit, whether or not she is responsible. Unemployment is now below 5%. They have a budget surplus, and they are no longer in a recession-like posture in Connecticut, and she jumped right on it, and she was tough. I don't know if she could have been beaten at all in that.
Indeed, and her situation in Connecticut was a piece of cake compared to New York State's situation when Hugh Carey took over 4 years ago. We were heading smack into a fiscal crisis, and he weathered that. He weathered another crisis when his own lieutenant governor deserted him. Looked for quite a while as though he was going to be beaten and would be a one-term governor, but this evening he is ahead. He may well win a second term. He may get to keep that $85,000 a year job. And we have Carl Stokes and Abe Beam, our former mayor, here in the studio to discuss Carey's comeback.
Chuck, good evening, Mayor. Good to see you again. Carl. Listen, did you anticipate, if our figures hold up, that Carey appears to be winning by a wide margin, would you have thought he was going to be able to come from as far behind?
Not so at the beginning, but I think in the last few weeks he made tremendous progress. I think, too, the concentration of the campaigning of Carter and his family and Mondale, I think that stirred up the interest in this campaign, especially here in the city.
Well, let's assume that the figures are going to hold up and that Carey is going to be our governor now for the next 4 years. Do you see it having any specific meaning beyond what his being a friend of the city in the past 4 years is going to be? What do you think it will mean?
No, I don't think it'll be any meaningful difference, because I think that's universally agreed that New York City must be helped. The failure to do so would hurt the state, the federal government, internationally, and that was proven in 1975. But regardless of who's governor, he's going to have a tough time the next 4 years because of the new approach in Washington, where as one of the bases for fighting inflation is to keep that federal budget down, and that means help won't be forthcoming in the manner in which the city might be entitled.
And we can look forward to more unemployment in all probability.
Well, it's already gone up, yes, and the Proposition 13 fever of cutting taxes is all around us. The Levittown decision requiring the revamping of the education formula.
The man behind us is telling us that we've got to cut out here. Good to see you again,
Glad
sir.
to see you, Carl.
Back to you fellas at the desk.
All right, thank you, gentlemen.
We'll be back right after about 20 more minutes of NBC's Decision 78. We'll have a complete wrap-up on News Center 4 and 11.
And we hope to have returns for you.
Yes.
That's right, Greasers. It's the terrific 10.
Decision 78. We'll have a complete wrap-up on News Center 4 and 11.
And we hope to have returns for you.
Yes.
That's right, Greasers. It's the terrific 10, turning the years back to the fabulous 50s. Rockin' and rollin' to your favorite golden oldies. Sha-na-na, Wednesday night at 7:30 on Channel 4. And Grease for Peace.
Take a break with Bob and Mary, weekdays 4 to 5 on 4.
From the NBC News Election Center in New York, Decision 78, reported by John Chancellor, David Brinkley, Tom Brokaw, and Jessica Savage. Here is John Chancellor.
And we're going to call two governors, two interesting races, and one of them a bit of an upset. In Pennsylvania, NBC News projects that Richard Thornburgh, the Republican, is the projected winner in the Pennsylvania race for governor, thereby beating Pete Flaherty, the former Pittsburgh mayor, in our judgment. And in Colorado, NBC News projects that Governor Richard Lamb is the projected winner, which means he'll be going back for a second term. Now let's have a look at the governor's map and see who our projected winners are so far this evening. Forrest James, Fob James in Alabama, George Busby in Georgia, no big surprise. James Thompson in Illinois, no big surprise. Harry Hughes in Maryland. Bill Milliken in Michigan, hard-fought contest. He's our projected winner. Ella Grasso in Connecticut. Those are the ones we have projected so far. Now we're going to change the map, I think, our famous electric map. And there you see senators, Republican senators in blue, our projected winners, Democrats in red. Sam Nunn in Georgia, no big surprise. Charles Percy made it. That is something of a surprise. Walter Huddleston of Kentucky, Bill Bradley in New Jersey, a projected winner. Strom Thurmond in South Carolina, Larry Pressler in South Dakota. Howard Baker in Tennessee, Donald Stewart in Alabama, David Pryor in Arkansas, David Boren in Oklahoma, Dave Durenberger in South Carolina. That's Minnesota. Sorry about that, but he is a Republican. And Joe Biden in Delaware. Nancy Kassenbaum is our projected winner in the Senate in Kansas. Claiborne Pell, no surprise, in Rhode Island. J. James Exxon in Nebraska, and William Armstrong in Colorado. David, it's some of these Republicans are doing fairly well. Dave Durenberger, our projected winner to beat Bob Short, a prominent Democrat in Minnesota. Bill Milliken holding on in Michigan. Chuck Percy pulling it out. How would you characterize the night for the Democrats as not bad, for the Republicans, not bad so far?
I would say not bad so far. The final figures, obviously, we can't give until the other polls are closed and the other results are known, the net result. But so far, the Republicans are doing, I would say, fairly well. Maybe better than they expected. Senator Brooke has showed up in his headquarters in Boston. We're going to switch there.
you. Thank you. Thank you.
The Copley Plaza Hotel ballroom here in Boston for what his aides have said will be a concession speech. He's been joined, as is traditional in all Brooke campaigns, by his mother and his sister and the rest of his campaign retinue. Early in the evening, when the returns started to come in, Brooke aides said things were not looking good. One used the term grim, but they said they would hold out hope that the trend would change later in the evening. Then they stopped posting the returns. Now it looks like the senator's prepared to speak.
You couldn't have been better had we won. And I just want to say to you tonight that from the predictions that have already been made by national networks and from the precincts, elected precincts that we have had from our own calculations around the state, it appears apparent to me that Paul Tsongas has won this election. And I want to congratulate Paul Tsongas for the quality of his campaign. I want to congratulate him for the honorable manner in which he has conducted this campaign. And I want to assure him that I will make the transition of this office to him with all dispatch and will cooperate as fully as I can as he takes on this awesome responsibility of serving in the United States Senate in these very difficult days. It is sometimes difficult to lose. It is always wonderful to win. But I want to thank all of you wonderful people, those of you who are here, those of you who are still many, many places out there across this great state, many of those who are across this country who have contributed so generously, all of you of your time and your money and your energy and your prayers. When we were down in the valley, I did not cry, I cried out. And you answered that cry, and you have shown your faith and your confidence. And it has given me great strength to carry on and to conduct this campaign. And now that the campaign has concluded, I trust that there will still be those who will continue to fight in the United States Senate for our senior citizens, for our minorities, for our blacks, for our Hispanics, for the handicapped and for the poor and for the middle-income people who are becoming the poor and who will fight for peace on this earth, the things in which you and I believe, and will fight for full equality for all women and for equal justice for all people.
That was Senator Ed Brooke in Massachusetts conceding loss to Paul Tsongas, the Democrat. He is our projected winner in Massachusetts. That is a seat the Republicans have lost to the Democrats. It was one of the more, I suppose, gentlemanly is the word for the campaign. Not once during the campaign did Tsongas ever mention or allude to in any way any of Senator Brooke's divorce, financial, and other problems.
I think it's worth noting that the Senate has lost its only black on a night when it gained its first woman elected on her own. I'm not sure what that proves, but one of the things about Ed Brooke was that he was the only black in the U.S. Senate.
There was some discussion in Massachusetts of saying to people, do you want to vote against the only black in the Senate?
That's right.
Well, he was apparently very vulnerable because Ted Kennedy, for the first time in recent years, went up there to campaign against the Republican opposition at this time, to campaign for Paul Tsongas. And he normally has stayed out of these races.
Right, and Barry Goldwater, I guess we can call him a Republican, said he'd fly an airplane upside down to go up to Massachusetts to campaign for Brooke. I wonder if that would have made any difference. Anyway, Ed Brooke, after a long career in politics, you just saw him conceding.
It would have made quite a sight in any case.
It would have indeed.
I asked Senator Brooke if he did not win, if he would stay in politics, and he said he would not rule that out, and that if in the event that he did lose, he would consider staying in politics in some way or another. He wouldn't elaborate, but perhaps he'll be with us in other political offices in the future.
Well, he's out of it now, and we'll have more coverage of this election after this.
Every day I got 54 kids to deliver. So when nagging minor arthritis pain and its stiffness get a grip on me, I grab Ben Gay. Ben Gay's fast temporary relief works deep down to break up the pain in my muscles and joints. That's why Ben Gay is America's #1 selling arthritis rub. I know it really works for me.
When the pain of arthritis has you in its grip, break the grip of pain with Ben Gay.
Why does her skin feel so smooth?
Why does her skin look so clean? It's Mud, the super cleansing skin treatment. Mud absorbs excess oils, lifts dry skin cells, deep cleans pores. Mud tones and tightens, leaves your skin cleaner, softer and smoother. And the cleaner your skin, the better it looks.
What's the most efficient way to heat? Gas. It's America's most efficient energy system. And new gas heating systems make gas even more efficient, with energy-saving features like automatic pilotless ignition and vent dampers that can cut your gas use up to 20%. If it's time to replace your old gas heating system, remember, the future belongs to the efficient.
Okay. And we have some more projections to make, and one of them, an important projection about an important politician in a big state. In the state of New York, NBC News projects Hugh Carey, Governor Carey, a Democrat, as the winner in the gubernatorial contest. We are projecting him for a second term. 11% of the precincts are in. Carey has 62% of the vote tallied so far, and Perry Duryea had only, well, about half that. I'm sorry, I lost that right there. We have another projection in the state of Vermont. Governor Richard Snelling, the Republican incumbent in Vermont, is our projected winner in that state. And there are the figures showing him with 68% of the vote tallied so far. Tom, you were saying just the other day that only once in the history of Vermont has the state denied a sitting governor a second term.
That's right. They like continuity up there. But the big story that you've just mentioned here is the story in New York, of course, where Hugh Carey did win. We're projecting that he has been reelected. There was a great deal of concern among the Democrats that he was about to lose that race, and he was trailing by all of the polls, both the campaign polls that they keep for themselves and the public polls earlier on this fall. But he was able to close the gap in the final days with an enormous media push. Dave Garth, who's almost becoming a household name in this country, was the mastermind behind those. Hugh Carey, among other things, counted very heavily on a big vote in New York City. And his final television commercials looked like a UNICEF Christmas card. There were so many ethnic faces represented in those television commercials that you just about didn't miss any voting block in New York City. Interesting.
We want to talk about Menachem Begin?
Hey, that's right.
There was this surprise visit that we saw arranged in New York City. President Carter said he was not going to see the Prime Minister of Israel at all. No. And lo and behold, bang, there they were, and who stood between them, Tom?
In all the pictures, television and still.
Who was it?
Hugh Carey got a fair amount of attention out of that. The Jewish vote in New York City has the largest Jewish population outside of Israel anywhere in the world. And the Jewish vote here is traditionally heavily Democratic. That worked very well for him. Interestingly, however, a very strong stand against the death penalty on the part of Hugh Carey. Not only is opposed to the death penalty as a law, but he says that he will commute the sentence of anyone sentenced to death in New York should the legislature override his veto of a death penalty.
Also, the state went for Jimmy Carter 2 years ago by 52%, and I think it's important to keep that in mind, that you're going to have a Democratic governor. in the state of New York with all those electoral votes 2 years from now.
Okay, let's take a quick look at some other big states and how they're doing. New York, just briefly again, Hugh Carey, we are projecting, re-elected governor, a Democrat. 11% of the precincts in. Our projection is that he will be re-elected. In Massachusetts, a state that's been getting a good deal of attention because its Democratic incumbent governor, Michael Dukakis, was beaten in the primary by a man by the name of Edward King, a 53-year-old former professional football player. A lot of regular Democrats bailed out at that point, but Tip O'Neill stayed with King, and with good reason. Tip O'Neill's son is a candidate for lieutenant governor up there. In Pennsylvania, Milton Schaaf, the Democratic incumbent governor, a lot of scandal during his administration. The man who prosecuted a lot of that scandal was Richard Thornburg, then the U.S. attorney. Tonight we are projecting the new governor of Pennsylvania, Republican candidate. 9% of the precincts reporting a very narrow lead for Thornburg, but we are projecting that he will beat former Pittsburgh mayor Pete Flaherty. And in Ohio, here's how it stands at this hour. 4% of the precincts in thus far. The Democratic challenger is Richard Celeste. He is trailing considerably at this hour, but just a few of the precincts reported thus far, counting thus far. He is trailing considerable 69-year-old James Rhodes, the most durable political figure in Ohio probably in this century. Certainly the most durable man outside of Woody Hayes in Ohio in the past 20 years. James Rhodes has been in the governor's office at one time or another for the past 16 years in Ohio. So that's how the vote stands now in some very big and important, economically important states around the country. David Brinkley.
Tom, I have a projection in Maine where by our projection, the Democrats have lost a seat to the Republicans. Our projection is that William Cohen in Maine, the Republican, has won the Senate seat, now held by Senator Hathaway, a Democrat. Cohen, the Republican, elected Senate in Maine. Now, we heard a little earlier from Bob Dotson, who is in Oskaloosa, Iowa. We're going now to hear from him again and to find out what is happening there. Bob?
Well, they're about ready to count the votes here in Oskaloosa, Iowa. But, you know, there's an old saying out here in farm country that farmers, they live poor and they die rich. The only way they can make a real profit is when they sell off. And we have Roy Van Veldhuizen and Ron, I'm sorry. We were wondering that it's very difficult now with the land here in Iowa, farmland selling for about $1,000 up to $2,000, $2,500 an acre. How does a young person get into farming?
It takes a lot of capital and lots of credit.
Do you ever worry about where the next generation of farmers is coming from?
Yes, I do. It's pretty hard to figure out how they're going to get started farming.
Agribusiness, you think, might be able to take over some of the farms?
There's a possibility this could happen if the present farmers and their sons don't stick with it.
What does that seem to you? You've been here on the land, your family, for many years.
Well, it seems to me that we're going to have to operate as efficient as we can and try to hang on to this land so we can pass it on down to generations, say our own sons.
And yet farmers today are about 4% of the population in this country. And when they come up against a housewife, sometimes they lose. This is Bob Dotson from Oskaloosa, Iowa.
And we now have a projected winner in the state of Michigan in a very important Senate race. NBC News projects Carl Levin as the winner in the contest with Senator Robert Griffin, a two-term Republican, who now, according to our calculations, will not be returning to the Senate next year. Carl Levin, and now we have a victory statement by Mr. Levin, who is an attorney from Detroit, a former Detroit City Council president.
Needless to say, I'm not going to say anything to dampen your enthusiasm. It's too early to claim victory. But I've got to tell you that rumors have it that we're going to win. The projections look good. You look good. My wife Barbara looks better than ever. I've got to tell you that the people of Michigan looked good and were smiling when I went from poll to poll today, and when Barb and the kids and our family went from poll to poll today, I read something into those smiles and into the eyes of the people, and I firmly believe that that's the way the evening's going to end, is the way I read those smiles. But we're going to come back a little later because it just simply is too early to have a definitive result.
And there you saw Carl Levin, our projected winner in the race for the Senate in Michigan, which interesting state now tonight. Bill Milliken is our projected winner, a Republican in the governor's race. Bob Griffin, our projected loser for the Senate. We'll have more coverage of the 1978 elections after this.
It's the newest division of Textron, but it's been cutting a wide swath as a leader in its field since 1921. Jacobson is not a big company. Some 1,600 people work there, but they've earned a worldwide reputation for building fine outdoor power equipment for professionals as well as for you and me. And a lot of that reputation was built on new ideas, like the automatic recoil starter back in the 1920s, pneumatic tires for garden equipment, the all-hydraulic riding mower for golf greens, and now the Jacobson Power Burst Control to deal with tall, thick grass. A Jacobson garden tractor is even being used to experiment with the fuel of the future, the cleanest fuel of all, hydrogen. It's this spirit of innovation, from mowers to snow throwers, that makes Jacobson Textron's kind of company. Constantly looking for better ways to do things. That's what private enterprise is all about. And that's what we do at every division of Textron.
There's no mystery about douches. My mom told me about Massengill disposables.
Do you like them?
Yeah, I like Massengill freshness. They're pre-mixed, pre-measured, easy. They're made with a special design.
That is a clever design.
Only Massengill has it. Massengill disposable helps me feel Massengill fresh.
Massengill freshness. Sounds good.
2 fragrances and vinegar and water, the ingredients many doctors recommend. Massengill freshness made easy.
Here's some interesting figures from our NBC News AP poll, big one we took today, still taking. As we've already told you in the past, our polls show that more people don't want Jimmy Carter to run for president again in 1980. There are more who don't want him than who do want him. But the voters apparently don't like any other candidate much better. In fact, more voters, 23%, said they wanted Carter for president in 80 than any other candidate. Senator Kennedy was next with 20%. Ronald Reagan was third, not far behind, with 18. There was 14% for Gerald Ford. Carter was the choice of Democratic voters, with Kennedy second. Among Republicans, it was Reagan first, and then Ford. Now, we have been calling winners in the Senate and governor's races through the evening. There have been some surprises. There have been some results that were not very surprising. We cannot summarize it very well as yet because we don't have enough figures and enough winners or enough losers as yet. But so far, we have agreed, as you may have heard, that the Republicans have not done as badly as they might have expected to do. They didn't expect to do all that well, and so far, I would say they have done, what did we decide? Pretty well, Jim?
Pretty well so far.
Pretty well so far.
That's as precise as we want to be at this moment.
That's as precise as we can be at this moment. So what we want to do now is to bring you up to date. If you've been out or been painting a boat in the basement or whatever, we're going to bring you up to date on the races we have called so far. Governors first, and then the senators. And here they are in print, and I won't say anything. That's a promise.
I thought they were...
Decision 78 continues with the Tri-State Report. Brought to you by American Airlines. Now here are Chuck Scarborough and Jack Cafferty.
Good evening to you once again. The problem I told you about last time has been pretty much cleared up. We're getting some early returns in now. And we do have two projected winners for you. First of all, Governor Hugh Carey, we project, will win another term in the State House. Hugh Carey defeating Perry B. Duryea in our projected winner. If we take a look at the boards right now, at the statewide total, we see that with 14% of the precincts reporting statewide, Governor Carey has a substantial lead with 60% of the vote to Duryea's 40% of the vote to hang on to that office he holds already. Now let's take a look at the citywide returns in comparison. Citywide, with 32% of the precincts reporting, it's a little wider spread, 65% to 35%. Now I don't know if you noticed the vote totals earlier, but most of the vote that's coming in is coming in from the city. The totals you see right here are almost the same as the totals statewide. This means the city returns are coming in early. It means it did not rain today, so we're getting a big Democratic turnout in the city, and this may be one of the reasons why it's such a runaway at this point with Governor Hugh Carey. And, of course, we projected if it had rained, fewer Democrats would turn out, fewer people would turn out, and it might have been a closer race. However, we will shift right now to Carey headquarters with Melba Tolliver and see what's going on over there now that we've projected Carey the winner. Melba?
Chuck, I'm not sure how to describe the mood here at Carey headquarters at the moment. The crowd is here, the band was playing, the bar is open. The question is, where is the governor? We were told about a half an hour ago that he would be down here in the Grand Ballroom with the Statler. We assumed that he was coming to make a victory statement. Then a couple of minutes ago, we were told that he was not even in the building, that he is out visiting a local television station, and that in addition, he had not decided to make this statement because he had not received a call yet from Perry Duryea. Pia at Duryea headquarters, do you know why that call hasn't come into this headquarters yet?
All right, thank you, Melba. Well, in spite of the predictions, Mr. Duryea is not ready to concede. His campaign manager just came down and said that he feels there's not enough information yet for them to call this election. And he also said, we don't give up this easily. It's going to be a long night here. So we expect to be here for quite a few more hours. Back to you in the studio.
All right, Pia, thank you very much. And once again, we are projecting that Governor Hugh Carey will win re-election to keep his $85,000 a year job in New York State and run the state for 4 more years, overcoming great odds. At one point, he was considered clearly the underdog, with Perry Duryea clearly the winner. Another projection for you right now in the race for New York Attorney General. Robert Abrams is our projected winner there. Robert Abrams, at 40 years old, is an amazing vote-getter. If you'll recall, 4 years ago, he was fielded against Republican Louis Lefkowitz, who had been Attorney General then for 18 years, and he was sort of a sacrificial lamb. He almost beat him then. He is the winner tonight. He's our projected winner with 64% of the vote against Michael Ross, 36% of the vote. Now, moving on.